Hi there, welcome to this second video looking at the Cessna 152, and this one is about using axes and Ohs as ever, but this is about assigning an axis to my Logitech throttle quadrant. We've not done assigning an axis before, it's my first go at doing it. Just had a crack this morning and it seems to be quite effective. So we're breaking new ground here. Let's see how it works. So let's have a look at what we're trying to achieve. I'm looking at these here, and on my throttle quadrant, which I'll bring up over here, I hope you can see my throttle quadrant. The lighting's not great today, it's getting a bit dull. These ones here, of course, are allocated to my throttle quadrant, and those are the only two that I needed. And I want to allocate this carb heat here to this middle control, which I have done. And let me show you the ins and outs of how I did that. So the first thing we need to do is we need to look at the control options for the Microsoft control. So here's my flight yoke system plugged in. It's showing the yoke, but it's not showing the throttle quadrant, but it's part of the system. I kind of wish it was there, because there's a few buttons there that you have to keep working out which one you're pressing. When you first install it, it automatically has a default setting and it allocates things fairly logically. A few tweaks to make, but it's pretty good. In fact, if I just search by input here, and if I move my throttle, you can see that it's automatically allocated that to the throttle axis. And if I do another search by input, and that should pick up the mixture axis. So there it is, that's picked up the mixture. So you can see that it's axis Y, that's fine. And the middle one, the one that is unused really in the 152 and the one I want to use, if I move that, you can see that's actually allocated to the propeller axis. That's if you've got a variable pitch propeller, that you can change the pitch of the propeller with that. That's the one I want to reallocate. So I don't want to change the default profile, so what I did was went to preset manager, duplicate it and gave it the name 152, and then I went in and have to make some changes. And what the major changes, I need to deallocate this. I don't want this control here controlling that. I don't want it controlling anything. It would be nice if you could make it control the carb heat, but that axis, only certain axes are predefined in Microsoft in the control manager here, so you can't allocate it through this system, so we have to remove it. So I would remove it like this, but I don't do it in the default setting, I do it in the C152, but I've already done it. So I'll demonstrate here. Just click on that, left click, clear the current input, click validate, and it will be deallocated. It won't be there anymore. But don't do it here, do it when you're in the 152 profile. But I've already done that, and I'll show you that it's unallocated. So again, we'll do the search by input. If I move this around, it's found that it's the x-axis for that, and not allocated. It's only showing the assigned allocations. There's nothing assigned to it, so we've cleared that. So I won't make any changes here because I've already made those changes. What we need to do now is to work with axes and Ohs. And the first thing we need to do with axes and Ohs is to actually look at the event here. So if I do my scripting, watch the simulator event, and I'll clear that list. There we go. Let's move this out of the way for a moment. Watching that event, if I move this on the screen, you will see that it is labelled the, not carb heat, it's labelled the anti-ice gradual set for engine 1. Handy to remember. And there it is moving. And we need to know the minimum value, so when there's no heat it's set to 0, and if we put it fully out it's set to this really handy number 16384, which happens to be 2 to the power 14, so it's a 14-bit number, but it's only the 14th bit that's set, which I'm not sure why they chose that. If anybody knows, leave a comment. But it's the 14th bit. It's not actually like all 13 bits are set, it's just that one bit that's set, the 14th bit, not the other ones. But there we are, that's the number they've chosen, and we need to know that later on because we need to do some scaling to make our control work properly. So let's have a look at Axis and Ohs itself, and you can see I've already allocated the control here, and you can see that as I move it, that's moving properly. And what's inside here, so normally you would click on here plus and add a new assignment, but let's have a look inside. I'll come back to this in a minute because this dialog box does go away. I'm not quite sure whether it's I need to trigger it because it's an Axis event and leave it like that, or clicking on both is better. I keep flicking between the two and I can't really see much different. But if you're doing some other allocation, you need to know that you can have it triggered if it moves in both directions, or you can have it triggering only for up or only for down. Not quite sure which you'll use that for yet, because I need to explore this a bit further. And you've got some repeats, and you can decide whether it's momentary or a toggle. I presume that's really for setting switches rather than these continuous controllers. Anyway, let's have a look at the top here. These are the options that you have got if you're going to set this. You could choose some of the predefined axes, and they're already really there for you. But as I said, there isn't one for carb heat. It's just not there. You've got all the different throttles and everything that you can allocate. The collective, I presume that's for helicopters, or in preparation for helicopters. But there we are. That's what you can set as a simulator axis. It's relatively limited. If you click here, you've got access to the entire list of variables, events that you can use. Some of them won't be appropriate, of course, but our anti-ice one is here, so we can double click and put that in. But honestly, you've got a control to everything, so you could set things to be controlled by a button or whatever on your yoke or your throttle quadrants. But there you are. You've got absolute control over everything. Now, see what I mean about that dialog box disappearing? It's gone now, so be aware of that. I'm not quite sure what triggers it to go away or come back again. Anyway, it's detected that we are using this rotation here, and in fact you can see that it is giving me the actual data. So at the very top it's 0, from at the bottom it should be a number that you're fairly familiar with if you've done your binary and all that kind of stuff, 65535. So you do need to see that sometimes when you push it to the top, it doesn't quite go, because it's probably a slightly dirty potentiometer or a little bit of mechanical linkage. So it will go to 0, but you do need to give it a bit of a clunk sometimes together. But to be honest with you, that it being a tiny bit open isn't going to cause any issues at all. And it's fairly reliable when you go down to the stop at the bottom. Okay, so what we do need to do though is we need to scale that maximum number to the actual maximum that it's expecting. So that 0 is 0, that's fine, and we double click here and type in 16384 as our maximum value. So it will scale that to that, and it will scale along the whole curve perfectly correctly. Okay, and that's it. That's what we set really. This filter strength here is supposed to filter out that sometimes your potentiometer could be just slightly dirty, and it can be flicking between two values, so it stops that happening. And we also will only get it to update when we make a change. There's no point in it continuously sending that data, only when we make the change. So I would then click save, but let's cancel that because I've already got it set up and it's working. I don't want to make any changes. So there we are, that's it. Depending on the control you've got, you can reverse the axes and you can set a curve. You've got these various things you can set dead points for. I haven't explored it all totally, what you can do with it. But you can reallocate the center and things like that. So things you can do with it, and I'll need to read the instructions more. I probably will get more in depth in this because I'm fairly sure that I'll be moving over to putting all of my joystick and yoke settings in here so that it automatically detects which aircraft I've got, because the Microsoft system doesn't do that. You have to remember every time when you're flying on it, if you've got a different allocation on your joystick for your aircraft, you need to remember to change your profile first. It's caught me out a few times. Okay, so there we are. Next video coming up will be looking at the X-Touch Mini, the MIDI controller I use, and we'll start with looking at the rotary controls and how I allocated those. That'll be where we are next. So I shall see you in the next video.